Well, welcome back, everybody. It's great to see the energy and the enthusiasm about all of this work. I believe this is the penultimate session, so thanks for hanging with us today after 2 full days. But it's great to see this community taking shape and the connections that you all are making and these new ideas and all these curious questions. And I'm sure, like any effective, successful conference, that your brains are full, just like your notebooks are full of lots of ideas and follow-ups to do. So before we get into the Game Changers session, I just want to commend the founders of the National Book Access Association for their leadership and their vision for pulling this all together, really leveraging this amazing work that's happening all across the country. So I know we'll have time for accolades, but just wanted to give a mention to those who put forth lots of energy to pull this all together, including this conference. I'm Brian Gallagher, and I've been working with the NBAA since the fall, really as an advisor, someone who's been kind of working with them as these new ideas are coming up, and it's been just a pleasure to reconnect with many of them and get to know so many of you. My connection to the book world is via Reach Out and Read, which I'm sure many of you know, where I had the privilege of working for 15 years and leading it for 8. So a quick plug, if you haven't connected with your local Reach Out and Read pediatric site, I encourage you to do so. There's lots of potential partnerships on the heels of our partnership discussion. And just one housekeeping note, we are going to end this session at 40 minutes past the hour and then go into some breakout groups so everyone can just continue to brainstorm about NBAA, macro level, provide some input into what's happening there. So game changers and pain points. Game changers, first let me just say that everyone here is a game changer. And if you agree, wave your hand or raise your hand or put something in the chat. And if you didn't raise your hand, do so now, because no matter where you are, what you're doing, you certainly are a game changer, and that's why you are here. But we've all been at that organizational inflection point where there's some opportunity to seize, some challenge that needs to be resolved, some action that needs to be taken to move our organization to the next level. And we all know sometimes that decision in and of itself is takes a lot of courage and work and resources to make. But once we do, that also takes, the implementation piece takes resources and time and energy and commitment and sometimes disagreements from others. So we're excited to focus on, at least start our conversation today with 2 great examples from 2 of your colleagues on one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast. We have Larry Abrams from Book Smiles in New Jersey and the Philadelphia area. And we have Susan Dibble from Page Ahead in Washington State. So I'm going to do some brief introductions and then a few questions for Susan and Larry. But then if we have time, we'd love to open it up for some other examples as well. So Larry Abrams, founder and executive director of Book Smiles in Pennsauken, New Jersey. Larry has always been an avid reader, and after graduating from the University of Rochester in English, served as an officer in the U.S. Navy. Thank you, Larry, for your service. He has a master's in teaching and taught high school English for over 21 years. And as many of you recognize that children who grew up with books came to the classroom reading at or above grade level, and those who did not, who lacked those books, struggled with basics and the fundamentals. And that led him to find more books for children who did not have that access, which led to the founding of Book Smiles. And after recently retiring from teaching English, Larry is focusing on Book Smiles full time. And we have Susan Dibble from Page Ahead, where Susan has been the executive director since 2006. And prior to Page Ahead, she directed the King County chapter of the Muscular Dystrophy Association, where she led their work researching causes and cures for neuromuscular diseases. And Susan has a bachelor's in communications from the University of Calgary in Alberta. So first, before we get into your specific game-changing example, I'd love for you just to take a minute or less to tell us about your organization and your mission and your programs. And Susan, we'll start with you.
That sounds great. Thanks, Brian. And thanks for having me. So Page Ahead's mission is to boost the reading achievement for students in low-income communities in Washington State. We do that by addressing the two most critical times in a child's reading development: birth to 5, when they acquire so much of their language development, and then once they start school, addressing summer learning loss, particularly in reading and literacy, of course. Page Ahead has 2 programs that target these periods. Our largest is Book Up Summer. It currently serves about 23,000 students in Washington, and that one provides 12 new books for students in grades kindergarten through 2nd through a special book fair held at school before summer break. The students participate in it starting in kindergarten and through their 2nd grade year, so they get 3 years of the program, so 36 books total. The other is Story Leaders, which combines pre-K teacher training and dialogic reading, along with 1 book per month for children to take home. So the children in that program get 8 books at the end of their, and that's a school year program. And those are our 2 largest. We have a couple other programs that are more legacy programs that are about book reading in the community and enthusiasm. So we have 18 little free libraries that we maintain and place in the community that we put probably about 8,000 books a year out into. We call them book oases. And then they're book deserts. And then we also have a Books for Kids program that's really for basically for school partners that have not been onboarded into some program yet. Excellent. That's a little about Page Ahead. We've been around for 34 years.
And you operate across Washington State, correct?
Correct, across Washington State, yep.
Okay, great. Thank you, Susan. You have a lot going on. Larry, over to you.
All right. Well, at Book Smiles, our mission is to divert perfectly good children's books from the incinerators, from the pulpers, from the landfill, keeping that green concept in mind. But really the sweet spot is to get these books into the homes and hands of kids living in book deserts. We have no restrictions on what we give away to kids. We want, ideally, every child to have a library of between 50 and 100 books. I started out of my garage. I am a garage story, and we now have a 4,300 square foot book bank. Because we have a lot more space, we're able to do things like distribute nearly 600,000 books, children's books, during our last year. We're closing in quickly on the 2 million mark of children's books given away. But really the crux of what we do, and this is what I'll be talking about a little bit later on, is how to gather books on an industrial level, to go beyond kids doing book drives. Hey, this is great. We continue to need that. We will always take it. But how do we get the big box thrifts and the book retailers, book resellers, how do we get them to give us the books so we can give them to these precious children? That's it.
Excellent. Well, from your garage to many counties in 2 states, quite impressive. So Larry, why don't you pick it up from there? And I'm going to ask Larry and Susan to each just tell us about this inflection point, this opportunity that each of them had to create a transformational change within their organization to achieve that mission. So Larry, why don't we start with you?
So when we were a year out of my garage, we were in a 1,000 square foot facility. We had no room. And during the pandemic, teachers stopped coming to the book bank. So we found food banks would take our stuff. And I remember seeing the Food Bank of South Jersey drive in with their box truck. And we had to figure out how to palletize books. And I looked on YouTube and we palletized. And then I saw that truck using a lift gate to raise these books up, insert them in the truck, and away they went. And then I said, I want that. And because that would allow us to then take it up a notch. And also too, we needed the extra space. We needed to get a box truck. I priced it out. I thought, okay, for about $35,000, I can get a used box truck with a lift gate. I'll wrap it, We went out. I was able to fundraise that money easily because it was concrete. People understood what it is we were doing. One, we had billboard space. Whenever we drove around town, hey, there was our QR code on the back. Here was our, if you want to go Google Book Smiles Book Truck, you'll be able to see it yourself. We had more storage space because we were only 1,000 square feet, so we used the truck for storage space. We had a lift gate, which saved my mid-50s back. And that truck proved to be such an enormous game changer. We're now able to pick up Gaylords of books from Goodwill because they will not deliver to us. We're able to clear out estates because we turn grown-up books into cash. There are so many other uses that we have for this truck, and those are just a couple, and that is the story of our game changer. The pandemic, from the pandemic to the Food Bank of South Jersey, I want that truck, we got the truck, and now it's indispensable.
Excellent. And you drive a truck. You learned how to drive a truck.
I learned how to drive, an English teacher learned how to drive a truck, how to use a lift gate, how to use a pallet jack. I figured all of that stuff out. And now, get this, one of our employees, I don't really drive the truck so much anymore, but we now have a full-time employee who is our warehouse guy, and he goes up on all the pickups, all the deliveries, and he uses that lift gate and the pallet jack like a boss.
All right, we can all picture it. So thanks, Larry. We're going to come back to some of the specifics there. But Susan, over to you. What was your transformational change that moved your organization in a new direction?
Well, so the two programs that I mentioned in the intro, Book Up Summer and Story Leaders, neither of those programs existed before our transformational change. So Page Ahead, I mentioned, is 34 years old. And about 12 years ago, Page Ahead kind of reached an inflection point where we were at a period where we had been doing I don't know how many people on the call are familiar with Reading is Fundamental, or RIF, but Page Ahead was the largest RIF recipient in Washington. And we were serving about 200 schools a year with RIF. And but the question had kept percolating with folks in our on our board and in our leadership that was about how does what we're doing help boost kids' reading achievement, the kids we exist to serve, so children who are most likely to experience the literacy achievement gap. And the data wasn't very good on what we were doing at the time, which was 3 books a year during the school year. So that set us off on a journey to really learn about what makes a difference for kids in the reading development, especially around book access, because we were already experts in book access. And that's what drove us to encounter Dr. Allington's research around summer learning loss and book access. And from there, we invited him to come and speak. He was in Seattle for a conference, a literacy conference, and he came and very generously gave his time and spoke to us for a couple hours. And our question was really how, if we were going to take your research and turn it into a program, what would that look like? And he spent 2 hours with us to just really brainstorm that out. And that is now Book Up Summer. So Book Up Summer, if you're not familiar with Dick Ellington's research, he really showed that it's actually about the quantity of words children read during the summer months. So it isn't the number of books, it's really the number of books. So if a child was an older child, a kid could read 3 or 4 books over the summer and be just fine, because there's a lot more words in a chapter book. But for young children, so the target audience for us, they really need to read a lot of books because there aren't very many words in picture books. So we stick with his research. We provide the 12 books. The children choose them. They're very excited about all the different choices. And then they take them home and read them over the summer. And then the other key piece is that dosage. Dosage is really important. So the children stay in the program for 3 years. You're treating this, basically the idea, we kind of think of, we talk sometimes in medical terms, but you're treating the child for 3 years. And then the idea is that the intervention creates about a 40% of a grade level in reading. So those two programs really came about because we had this idea that we wanted to do more for kids around reading success. And that really, because we documented that and put that into all of our, like our mission statement, all those things, it really changed the course of, it therefore changed the programs that we offered. We could no longer support doing programs that weren't book and evidence-based.
Excellent. Congratulations on that success.
Thank you.
And now that everyone in the Zoom room has heard a thumbnail sketch of these examples, feel free to go into the chat with your questions. I've got a few, but certainly want to open it up to others. Just like any project, there's always a process, right? There's the light bulb that goes off, the idea that you have, and then the work to lead up to making a decision, and then obviously the implementation and the outcomes that you're looking for. So let's start at the beginning. Would love to know what kind of stakeholder engagement each of you had prior to making that decision, who you needed to engage, what that process was like for you.
So it wasn't exactly me who said, I need a truck. It was one of my board members. She actually, like, it was at the back of my mind. Yeah, it would be really nice to have one. But my board member, Pamela Stahlcup, she made it happen. And then what my board did, another person then got us, had a little stake in this by having us have like a schematic where you can buy a wheel for $400 and you can buy a steering wheel for this, and you can get the motor for $1,000. And so we made it fun. A couple of the board members really pushed ahead, but that's how we were able to get our funding for the truck. I had the board behind it. They realized what we needed.
For us, it was kind of a little bit of a longer journey. So we started with bringing in some different stakeholders and people that like subject matter experts that our board could ask questions of. Again, they had already come from this place as, you know, from a questioning perspective anyway. So we had folks from Seattle Public Schools, the University of Washington, and so we had panelists that basically shared why summer was such a challenge, and, like, you know, kind of what was already happening in the community for children that we exist to serve in the summertime. So you don't want to duplicate efforts either. And so there was, it's a great question, Brian, because there was a lot of community listening. And then because we serve the whole state of Washington, we actually had to divide the state up into educational service districts. And each of our program committee members took an educational service district, and their job was to call down the districts and ask them, what do you do for low-income kids in the summer months? What's already happening in your community? And 9 times out of 10, it was credit retrieval for high school only. Click. Credit retrieval for high school only. Click. Nobody was doing anything for children in the summertime, is what we basically learned. So, so it did take a lot of like digging around and questioning and thinking about it for sure before we decided to make a move. And then once we did decide to make the move, we did pilot Dick Ellington's research. We did the full 3-year pilot, and we sought special funding so that it didn't take away from any of our other existing programming. And we're fortunate enough to get a major funder for that. And then we did run a pilot with 2 school districts on a kind of limited basis. And we're able to get data share agreements with them. So it was an involved process to do that. But we kind of took a more of a safety step with the pilot to prepare our organization for the idea that we would grow the program once it was out of pilot.
Excellent. Yeah, I think pilots are always, with a significant change like that, an important step to do a proof of concept and learn modify it as you go. There's a question in the chat about sharing Dick Ellington's research. Is that something you have access to at your fingertips?
I do.
Excellent. And Susan, you mentioned funding. There's a question in here, Larry, about funding. Did the board contribute financially, and how did you pay for the truck?
Yeah, great question. We did have a couple board members step up and donate, 500 here. Nothing significant, but what was really cool is one of the board members knew somebody, knew a very powerful family, and she was able to give me an introduction, and I gave the case for a truck, and that person came up with $15,000. Now, this is when I was really new to fundraising. I still wasn't getting paid. $15,000 was a whole lot of money. And I think that also was a game changer because we were buying something tangible. We had a couple grants come through, and it's almost like the grant wrote itself. So I really want to impress that upon everyone. If you are looking to scale, stop doing it in the back of your minivan. That was my life, as it is the life for a bunch of you guys. I was just using my minivan for everything, but I could only fit like 2,200 children's books in my minivan, and then I was going to cream my axle. I don't want to go too far off topic, but yeah, the board did pay, but getting this truck led me to, it helped me get the confidence to go out and really fundraise beyond.
Excellent. So that leads me to my next question. And again, as all of you are thinking, would love to hear some other examples. So think about your game changer, and I'll open it up in a few moments. But each of you talked about, this having been a success. There's also the second half of the title here is pain points, game changers and pain points. And maybe we saved Larry's back as one of them. But what were some of the unintended consequences for each of you? Things that you would do differently, having learned and gone through this process? Susan, should we start with you?
Sure. I guess. Well, when we did the pilot, that did help us. Like the first time we did it, we just made it so complicated, where we had these elaborate book lists. We made so Scholastic was our partner at the time, and they brought in their book fair, and the books were more used as like display models. And then we had these elaborate book lists, and then we'd highlight the books that each child wanted. And we had like, I forget, in the beginning, with just kindergarten, it might have been like 1,000 kids with kindergarten. And so you have 1,000 of these lists of books. And then Scholastic had to take them back and like pack all the titles. They shipped them to the schools. We had to help our school partners pick the order for each of the kids. I mean, it was just terrible. So Scholastic actually helped us the next year with, hey, could we use our scanners and just not, strip out the pay part? Like we can code that in the warehouse, but could we use our scanners instead? I was like, yes, that is an excellent idea. So that saved a lot of time. And then I'd say one other pain point for us really came during the pandemic, and school closure, and with schools being our big partner in how you actually get books to kids, we had to do a lot of rapid thinking because schools closed in Seattle in March, and the kids normally get their books in June. So we really had to do a lot of calls to figure out how we were going to make sure the students could still choose and how they could take the books home, because we weren't going to be able to, they weren't coming to school to pick their books. So there was a lot of really great people who pitched in there, but because of how we set it up during COVID time, it really opened the door. So sometimes pain, I think the message I'd have is that it can open, there's a window that opens, right? And the window that it opened for us was really that we needed to diversify our supplier base. So for us, we use 3 different book vendors for our programs, and no longer rely on just one vendor.
Silver lining there.
Silver lining.
Yeah, for sure. Larry.
So our pain point came from getting a used truck. So again, I didn't have a budget. Really didn't know what I was doing as far as fundraising went. So used truck with a wrap, 35,000. A new truck would have been about 80 to 85, 90,000. But I just had one big pain point yesterday. We had a thingamabob go off, break, and there's a $2,600 bill right there that I had to pay out to the garage. Everything with a truck is so much more expensive than a normal car or a normal minivan. So quickly, soon after I got it, I needed a new battery, and then I needed a new cylinder for the liftgate, and then the liftgate water pump went. And oh, by the way, the liftgate was cannibalized. Right now, it's kind of rusty. It's still kind of safe, but I'm thinking now of getting another truck. So if I knew then what I knew now, I hate going back into the past. I want to get a newer truck or a nicer truck, and I will pay more for that. I just want it safe, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, there it is.
Lessons learned there as well. I'll ask one more question, and then, but feel free to raise your hand if you want to be in line to share, or I'll just ask you to unmute. Kind of as you think about the year ahead, where would you say your organization is now because you made this decision, this transformation? What's the impact on impact, so to speak, that has transformed your organization in what seems like a very positive way?
I'll just jump right on that. Getting that truck helped us double our business. We can now go to a school book drive and pick up 3,500 to 6,000 books. No problem. Like, we've got that down. In addition, one of the other things we can do is we can pick up Gaylords of books from Goodwill. So we can fit about 6 Gaylords onto the book truck, and I can't say enough how instrumental to the growth it's been for us.
And Susan?
Well, I would say that there really has been sort of nothing but a positive outcome since we made the change. The change itself, everyone feels a little off center. Everyone's a little like, are we doing the right thing? And there's fear and there's anxiety. But the change itself has been nothing but transformative for Page Ahead and for the kids we serve. Let's face it, like before COVID, we were almost to our goal of reducing the literacy achievement gap in Washington by 5%. We were like 4.5. It was so close. And that was our goal. We kept onboarding kids. And, based on our math, well, really a board member, let's face it, like it wasn't me. It was one of our board members. He has the PhD in engineering, not me. And the idea was that you really had to serve more than 20,000 students with the program to get that level of change across the state, right? You needed volume. And we were almost there. And then COVID just beat literacy scores into the ground, man. Like, it's terrible. And, they're rising now, but that's a real problem and something that, we're starting to talk about in the future, but that's for another day. But I would say really, once you've made the decision, lean into it, because it really is, it's been great.
And I think your example in the time of COVID, of having to adapt and what's within your control, what's outside of your control, how do you pivot and do the things to stay focused on that mission?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So who among us would like to join this conversation and share a third or fourth example? Anyone want to come off mute and tell us your story? Among all the game changers here?
Brian, I'll go.
Amy.
So Book Fairies is 13 years old, and it was just me and my garage when I started. And it wasn't until I received my very first grant of $15,000 that I was able to hire somebody to help me and handle all the logistics. Because as a one-woman show, there is not as much that you can do once you add in somebody else handling all the logistics. So that $15,000 grant was able to really propel us into that next stage. And I was able to hire the logistics person. So that was our game changer. The pain point that comes along with that is the by having somebody, you're able to do so much more, which just means so many more hats that you have to wear as the executive director, and that many more logistical issues that you need to deal with, because the larger you get, the larger the organization, the larger the impact, which is fantastic, but becomes significantly more work.
And the idea of change management as part of this, right? Every day dotting, the balcony and dance floor metaphor of thinking big picture, but also the day-to-day examples that you have to address and bring along. Thank you, Amy. Who's next? Oh, we have Elizabeth.
Hi, I can jump in. I would say COVID was another kind of a game changer experience for us as well. Prior to COVID, we had been exclusively event-based. So everything we did with the book truck. We went into the schools, we set up kind of a free book fair. And of course, over the course of a week, every single one of our spring events was canceled. And the challenge, of course, as everyone knows, is that the demand was still there. We actually had so many more kids that were in need of access to books. And so we ended up sort of shifting our program to we call it our Lit Box program, but it's very similar to the events. It's all the same books and it's curated and all of that, but we put it in boxes, and we have literacy support materials, and we have trainings that we do for educators, staff, librarians, student volunteers, anyone who's interested in how to engage teens around books. So about how do you help someone, find a book if they have no idea what they want to read and all that kind of stuff. And during COVID, as we distributed the boxes, we also started doing these trainings over Zoom, and it really just exploded the number of people we were able to serve. So, I founded the organization. I was the only employee for about 10 years. We had the book truck in 2013, and I've been doing it full time since then. But then, at the point that we started, once we brought events back online after things started opening up, it was just our programming doubled like overnight in terms of, because we were serving the schools with the events and smaller groups with the boxes, and it's just continued to grow exponentially since then. And it really changed our ability to reach think outside the book truck, as it were.
Excellent. So this questions of scale has come up a lot, I think, over the conversations, and there's lots of ways to think about that. But certainly, this allows for that growth to happen in whatever vehicle, so to speak. No pun intended there. You wish it to.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Elizabeth. Did I miss a hand before? Colleen.
Hi, everybody. So I'll talk about a game changer that also sort of created a pain point and then caused another game changer. And now we're in another pain point. So the game changer was, we got a really I'm from the Cleveland Kids Book Bank. We got a really big donation of brand new books like remainders. And we got about 60,000 books all at once, which was more than we had ever received. This was slightly before the pandemic. And they were beautiful. There were multiple copies of the same book, and they were lovely, and we didn't know how to distribute them. Because we typically do like mixed boxes by reading level, and we didn't want to give an entire box of Aladdin to the same person if they didn't ask for it. So we had a sort of, so that was a pain point. And the game changer that we came up with was an online marketplace. Yeah, Molina, the Molina, yeah, yeah. We still have Aladdin in the warehouse, but it's almost gone. So we created an online marketplace for our partners to go on themselves and select if they wanted multiple copies and how many they wanted. And then our volunteers custom pack those orders. And at this point, we sort of have a rotating selection. We still have some of those original Molina books on there, but now we are also putting diverse brand new books that we purchase. We're putting small selections of those on as well, so that our partners can get some of those in addition to what they're looking for. So that's been really helpful. And we're just sort of recently trying to figure out how to logistically on the back end marry our marketplace orders with our regular reading level orders. They're in different places. People go to a marketplace and they order some books, and then they might also order books from our regular reading level box. And it's frequently like missed, like we'll deliver the marketplace, but oh, they also asked for regular reading level boxes and they don't get put out at the same time. And I think it's potentially solvable if we maybe get a better operating system. So I'm particularly interested in learning more about like Salesforce and capabilities like that that could potentially marry people's orders, so that I'm not like copying and pasting email addresses into a spreadsheet to try to see like, is this one here and also here? Okay, let's put them out at the same time, if that makes sense. So that's where we're at right now.
A lot of logistics to manage there. And there is a question here. Do you charge a fee for being able to customize a box of books?
Yeah, I think that's another pain point that we've sort of, no, we don't. We don't do that. Partially it's because it started from this Molina donation, right? Which was just books that we were looking to unload. So it was like, do you want them? Great, take them. Now though that we are we're purchasing, we've tossed the idea around a little bit of how we would do that. And to be honest, we're not exactly sure how to start charging for something that has been free for the past, 8 years. So we're not really there yet, but it's something that we've talked about, like a nominal is there, but that's another thing, right? Because we don't have a system. If our partners were members, how, like, we would need something for them to log in on or all of that. So also potentially something tied into a bigger system overhaul that we're looking at this point. But no, we do not charge.
I actually think this is, sorry to interrupt, but I do think this is something that the NBA as a whole, us as a collective, can wrap our heads around and resources around to help folks figure out how to responsibly charge for programming fees, operational fees, that type of thing. So I'll be taking notes.
I was thinking of a future webinar or discussion focus group about that for sure. We've got a few other examples in the chat, so thank you for contributing there as well around just, again, leveraging donations, seizing opportunities, partnerships, lots of great ideas here. With 1 minute to go, I'm going to just take this opportunity to thank you all for this discussion, these questions, and thank Susan and Larry for going deeper into your examples and for your work and your leadership. Thank you for sharing your stories with us today. And it's been great conversation. And I know it will spur many others. So this is why I love being in this community. It's all of you who are so passionate about getting books into the communities.